गाइस, वेलकम टू माय चैनल। तो आज के वीडियो में हम जिस बुक्स की रीडिंग करने वाले हैं उस बुक का नाम है ओलिवर ट्विस्ट, जिस बुक को चार्ल्स डिकेंस ने लिखा था। चैप्टर 1, प्लीज सर, आई वॉन्ट सम मोर। द लाइफ ऑफ यंग ओलिवर ट्विस्ट हैड अ सैड बिगनिंग. It continued to be sad for many years. Oliver was born in a poor house one winter night in the year 1837. His mother died that very same night. A pity, said the doctor. She was so young and beautiful. He turned to the old woman who had helped him and asked her, who was she? Nobody knows. They found her in the street and brought her here. The doctor looked at the woman's shoes, which were worn out. She has come a long way, he said. And the lifted up that left hand and said, no wedding ring. Oh, well, he hurried away. The poor little orphan was given the name of Oliver Twist. They kept him in the poorhouse with a number of other boys. All were badly treated because the master of the poorhouse, Mr. Bamble, by name, was a cruel man. At the age of 9, Oliver was a pale, thin boy. All the boys were pale and thin. They had to work hard and they never had enough to eat. They were always hungry. It was true that they had 3 meals a day, but each meal consisted only of a bowl of watery soup. Twice a week they were given an onion. On Sundays they had half a cake each. The boys were almost starving. Often they were too hungry to sleep. One boy, the tallest of them all, said, if I don't have another bowl of soup, I shall eat one of you. His eyes had a wild look. Indeed, the boy was almost mad with hunger. The smaller boys believed him and were very frightened. What could the poor orphan do? They thought, they talked. Then they made up their minds. One of them must go up to the master when he was serving the soup and ask for more. This seemed a good plan to all of them. But who was brave enough to ask for more? They were all afraid of Mr. Bamble. All of them had been beaten by him. They know his heavy hand and his heavy stick. Nobody dared to ask him for more. There was more talk. At last, it was decided that Oliver should ask for more at supper that evening. Supper time come. The boys took their place in the cold stone hall. At one end of it, the master stood beside a big pot of soup. In his right hand, he held a big spoon. Each boy, in his turn, came up to the master with his bowl. The master gave him a spoonful of soup. The soup was soon gone. The boys licked their bowl and then their fingers. They were still hungry. They looked at one another. Then they looked at Oliver. They began to whisper. The boys next to Oliver pushed him forward. Oliver walked slowly toward the master, bowl in hand. Then he said in a small, frightened voice, please, sir, I want some more. The master, a fat, healthy man, turned suddenly pale. What? He roared. Please, sir, I want some more, Oliver said again, trembling like a leaf. Mr. Bamble hit Oliver on the head with his spoon. He seized the boy and shouted for help. The cook and the kitchen boys rushed in. They held poor Oliver while Mr. Bamble beat him till his arm ached. That boy will be hanged, I am certain, he said. He asked for more. Oliver was locked in a dark room. The next morning, this notice appeared on the gate of the poor house. A reward of £5 is offered to anyone who will employ Oliver Twist, an orphan 9 years of age. Chapter 2, Oliver is sent to work at a coffin maker's. It was a week before anyone accepted that offer. During that time, Oliver was left in the dark room. He was let out for an hour each evening. Then he was taken in front of the other boys in the cold stone hall. There he was beaten as an example to them all. At last, an employer came to the poor house. This was Mr. Sowerberry. Mr. Sowerberry made coffin and he needed a boy to help him in his workshop. Oliver packed his things in his handkerchief. With his under his arm, he left the poorhouse for Mr. Sowerberry's shop. Mr. Sowerberry was thin and ugly. So was his wife. He was very tall, while she was very short. Both of them were mean and cruel. From the beginning, they treated Oliver cruelly. Mr. Bamble accompanied Oliver to the coffin makers. There, Mrs. Sowerberry looked at the boy. He is very small. She complained to Mr. Bamble. That's true, but he will grow. Oh, yes, he will grow and on our food and drink. I know these poor house boys. All they think of is eating and drinking. But will they work? Mrs. Sowerberry gave Oliver a push. Get downstairs, little bag of bones, she said. Oliver went downstairs to a dark kitchen where a very dirty, untidy girl was sitting. This was Charlotte Sowerberry. Charlotte, where are those bites of meat that we were keeping for the dog? Give them to his boy. Charlotte pushed a plate full of bites to meat toward Oliver. His eyes shone. He ate them hungrily. Mrs. Sowerberry watched him in horror. That boy will ruin us if he goes on eating like that, she said. When Oliver had finished, Mrs. Sowerberry took a dirty lamp and led him upstairs to the workshop. There's your bed under there, she told him, pointing to the counter. You will be sleeping among the coffins, but I am sure you won't mind that. We have got no other place for you. She went away, leaving Oliver alone among all the coffins. Poor Oliver stood there trembling with fear. Were there dead men inside the coffin? Were there ghosts? Would they creep out while he was sleeping? For a long time his fear kept him awake. At last, toward morning, he fell into a troubled sleep. Oliver was awakened by someone kicking the shop door. He ran to open it. His hands were cold and he was slow in undoing the chain. Hurry up, shouted an angry voice. Don't you keep me waiting. I am coming, sir. The door will be open in a minute, sir. I suppose you are the boy from the poorhouse? The voice shouted. Yes, sir. How old are you? 10, sir. I am going to kick you when I get in, said the speaker, whistling carefully. At last, Oliver was able to open the door. Outside, a big, fat boy was standing. Oliver thought that he was a customer and asked him, Do you want a coffee, sir? You will need a coffee before I finished with you, the fat boy replied. He then asked, Do you know who I am? Poorhouse. No, sir. I am Mr. Noah Claypole. You are working under me, and I will see that you work hard. Poorhouse. Open the windows. He gave Oliver a kick and then went downstairs to the kitchen for his breakfast. Oliver followed him. Charlotte was very kind to Noah. Come and sit near the fire, Noah. Dear, I have nice bite of bacon for your breakfast, she told him. Charlotte was very unkind to Oliver. She pointed to a box in the coldest corner of the room. You go and sit over there, she said. Do you hear, Poorhouse? Asked Noah. Charlotte thought that this was a good joke. She laughed heartily. Both of them laughed at poor Oliver as he sat in the cold eating his bread and lard. So it went on day after day for several months. Oliver was badly treated by all. He suffered in silence. Then one day he surprised them all. They thought he was timid and afraid. So he was, but he had some courage, at least, and one day he showed this. Chapter 3. Oliver is cruelly treated and run away. It was a dinner time. Oliver and Noah Claypole were in the kitchen waiting for their dinner. Noah was in a bad temper as usual. He was doing all he could to make Oliver angry. He put his feet up on the table. He pulled Oliver's hair. He pinched him. He kicked him. He did all this in order to make Oliver cry. But Oliver did not cry. At last he asked Oliver, "Poor house, how's your mother? She's dead. Don't you say anything about her. What did she die of, poor house?" "A broken heart," Oliver told him, and the tears come into his eyes. Noah laughed. "Crybaby, crybaby. He's crying for his mother. You stop talking about my mother. You had better be quiet." "I had better be quiet, had I? You are being very rude, poor house. I am afraid you are a rude little boy. And your mother, let me tell you, was a real bad woman." "What did you say?" said Oliver, looking at him hard. "I said that she was a real bad woman. It is good thing that she died when she did. If she had not, she would have been hanged. That's certain she had." Oliver gave him no time to say anything more. He flew at him and seized him by the throat. He shook him hard and then he threw him to the floor. "Help, help," Noah screamed. "Oliver's gone mad. He's murdering me. Help, help, Charlotte." Charlotte and Mrs. Sorberry rushed into the kitchen. They seized Oliver and beat him hard. Noah got up and helped him. At last, they were too tired to beat him any more. Then they dragged him, shouting and struggling, into the dark cellar and locked the door. Mrs. Sorberry fell into a chair and burst into tears. "She is going to faint," Charlotte cried. "Quick, Noah, get her a glass of water." "Oh, Charlotte," cried Mrs. Sorberry when she had recovered. "Oh, Charlotte, think, he might have murdered us all in our beds." "Poor, poor Noah," cried Charlotte. "He would have been murdered if we had not been here." "Poor Noah," said Mrs. Sorberry, looking at Noah with eyes that were full of pity. Then she asked, "What are we going to do now? Mr. Sorberry won't be back for hours, and Oliver is going to kick that door down in a minute. He means to murder us all. I know he does. Noah, run to the poorhouse and fetch Mr. Bamble." "Noah, run to the poorhouse." "Oh, Mr. Bamble, sir," he said breathlessly. "Oliver Twist gone mad. He's tried to murder me and Charlotte and the missus, all of us. If you don't come now, he will murder them." Bamble took his stick and hurried to the coffee maker's. He struck the door of the cellar hard, shouting, "Oliver Twist, you let me out of here. Do you know who I am?" "Yes." "And you are not afraid?" "No, I am not." Mr. Bamble could not believe his ears. He looked at the other in astonishment. "The boy mad," said Mrs. Sorberry. "If he was not mad, he would never dare to speak to you like that, sir. He is mad." Mr. Bamble looked very serious. Ma'am, he said thoughtfully. It's not madness, it's meat. Meat, exclaimed Mrs. Sorberry in great astonishment. Yes, meat, ma'am. You have been giving the boy meat, have not you? Well, yes, now and then. If you had given the boy soap, this would never have happened. No, ma'am, meat is the trouble. Oh dear, exclaimed Mrs. Sorberry. All this is because I have been too kind to him. Leave him where he is for 2 or 3 days. When he comes out, do not let him have any meat. You will be sorry if you do. He comes of a bad family. Ma'am, his mother. Oliver began kicking the door with all his strength. At his moment, Miss Sorberry returned home. They told him what had happened. He pulled Oliver out of the cellar. Now, what's all this? He asked, shaking the boy roughly. He called my mother's name, said Oliver. And what if he did? Mrs. Sorberry said. She deserved what he said and worse. She did not. She did. It's a lie. Mrs. Sorberry burst into tears. Mr. Sorberry beat Oliver unmercifully. When at last Oliver was in his bed among the coffee, he began to cry. He carried as if his heart could break. All through that night he cried. When daylight came, he wiped away his tears. His mind was made up. He would run away. He packed his things in his handkerchief quietly. He opened the shop door and walked out into the street. Chapter 4. Oliver meets the artful dodger who takes him to Fagin. Oliver hurried along and hid whenever a coach or a cart passed by him. By 8 o'clock, he was 7 miles away from the town. He sat down to rest for a moment. The words he saw on a milestone told him that he was 70 miles from London. London. The old man in the poorhouse had told him wonderful story about London. A boy could find good work in a big city. He felt that London was so large that the Sorberry would never find him there. London was the place for him. Oliver set out to walk to London. He had nothing in his pocket but a crust of bread. When that was gone, he had to beg for food. He slept wherever he could find shelter. When the weather was fine, he slept on a field or under a hedge. He was good tired, hungry, and rested. His feet were torn and bleeding, but on he went for 7 days. Then early one morning he entered the little town of Burnt, not far from London. He sat down on doorstep, feeling that he could go no further. At that early hour, there were few people about. Oliver was too tired to notice much, but his attention was caught by a boy who passed him by and then come back. This boy passed by again. Again he come back. He looked very strange. This boy. He was not much older than Oliver was, but he looked like a little man. He was wearing a man's clothes that were much too big for him. His eyes were narrow and very sharp. He had a dishonest look. This strange boy went up to Oliver. Hello, he said. What's the trouble? I am hungry, said Oliver. I have been walked for 7 days. You don't mean it. Well, I am poor myself, but I have got a shilling in my pocket. Come and have some breakfast. He helped Oliver to get up and led him to the nearest eating house. Oliver ate like a wolf. When he had finished, the stranger began asking him questions. Going to London? Yes. Got any lodging? No. Know anybody there? No. The boy whistled. You are in bad way, my lad, but don't worry. I know a kind old gentleman who lives in London. He will let you stay with him. He will find work for you. Will he? Said Oliver. Oh, thank you. It's very kind of you to help me. What's your name? Dawkins. Jack Dawkins, that's me. But my friends call me the Artful Dodger. I am a real clever lad. I am. What's your name? Oliver Twist. Well, young Oliver, we had better be on our way. Come on, the two boys set out for London. They reached it late that night. The Dodger led Oliver through many dark and dirty streets. What an evil place London is, thought Oliver. He began to feel afraid. Then the Dodger pushed open a door and pulled Oliver inside. This is the place, he said, up those stairs. He helped Oliver to climb the dirty, broken staircase. At the top, he pushed a door open and drew Oliver into a small room. The walls and the ceilings of the room were black with age and smoke. A smoky fire was burning. In front of the fire, there was a table. On this were a loaf and some butter and some dirty cups and plates. In a frying pan on the fire, some sausages were frying. Standing over them, with a long fork in his hand, was a dirty old man. His evil looking face was partly hidden by his long red hair. Above his head, on a line, a number of silk handkerchiefs were hanging. There were several mattresses by the walls. Seated around the table were five boys. They were the same age as the Dodger, but they were smoking pipes like men. They got up and crowded round the Dodgers as he whispered something in the old man's ear. This is him, Fagin, said the Dodger aloud. This is my friend Oliver Twist. Fagin bowed to Oliver very politely. Very politely he shook hands with Oliver. I am very pleased to meet you, the old man said. He turned to the boys. Shake hands with Oliver. My dears, the boys gathered round Oliver, laughing and pushing. The old man waved his frock and pushed the boys back. Stand back, my dears. Roger drew a chair near the fire for Oliver. Give him these sausages. Oliver sat by the fire, eating his supper. He looked up at the silk handkerchief. How beautiful they were, and there were so many of them. Pagans read these thoughts. They are our handkerchiefs, my dear, all ready for the wash, are not they, boys? To Oliver's surprise, the boys roared with laughter. Give Oliver a drink, Dodger, the old man said. The Dodger came up to Oliver with something in a cup. What is it? Asked Oliver. Hot gin and water. Oliver looked very surprised. Oh, I could not. I have never drank that before. Drink it, my dear, the old man said. It will do you good. Drink up, another gentleman is waiting for the cup. Oliver drank. In 3 minutes he was fast asleep. Chapter 5. Oliver becomes Fagin's pupil. Oliver slept till late the next morning. He opened his eyes but felt too sleepy to move. He lay there half asleep. There was no one in room but the old man. He was standing by the fire, making coffee. He looked toward Oliver, who was lying quite still. Then he crept quietly to the door and locked it. He bent down and lifted a brick up from the floor. From the hole underneath, he took out a box. He carried it carefully to the table and there he unlocked it. One by one, he took out its contents. Oliver watched him in astonishment. The old man held up a fine gold watch which sparkled with jewels. "A beauty," laughed the old man. Then he drew out other watches and examined them. "Then come rings, necklace, bracelet, and brooches." Fagin held them all with loving care. Suddenly, he turned his head toward Oliver, who was watching him. Oliver was awake. He had seen all. Fagin seized the bread knife and sprang toward the boy. "You were watching me. What you have seen? Tell me quickly." The old man stood over Oliver, ready to strike him with the knife. I could not sleep, sir. I wake up. I am sorry, sir. Were you awake an hour ago?" "Oh, no, sir." "Are you sure?" Fagin asked, with his knife at the boy's throat. "Certain, sir." "Ah, well, my dear, then it's all right. I was joking." Fagin put the knife back on the table. "I was only trying to frighten you. You are a brave boy. Ha ha, you are a brave boy, Oliver." He laughed and rubbed his hands. Then suddenly he asked, "Did you see any of my pretty things?" "Yes, sir." Fagin turned pale. "They are mine," he said. "I am keeping them for my old age. I shall need them then. I will soon be a very old man, my dear. I must have something to live on when I cannot work, must not?" "Yes, sir," answered Oliver politely. Then he asked, "May I get up now, sir?" "Certainly, my dear, certainly. Fetch that jug of water in the corner over there. I will give you a basin to wash in." Oliver went to fetch the water. When he turned round, the box had gone. Oliver had hardly finished washing when the artful Dodger came in with a companion. This was Charlie Bates. They all sat down and had breakfast together. How Oliver enjoyed it! There was hot coffee, there was hot rolls, and even ham. "Well, my dears," Fagin said to the Dodger and Charlie Bates, "I hope you have been working this morning." "Oh, yes, look at this." The Dodger handed two leather pocket books to Fagin. Fagin examined them inside and outside. "They are nicely made, although they are not so heavy as they might be," he said. He turned to Oliver. "The Dodger's a clever workman, is not he?" he asked. "Oh, yes, sir," very said Oliver. To Oliver's surprise, the two boys burst out laughing. "He is simple, is not he?" exclaimed Charlie Bates. "Now, Charlie," said Fagin, "what have you got, my dear?" Charlie showed him four silk handkerchiefs. Fagin examined them and said, rubbing his hands together, "Yes, they are good ones, but I am afraid that the marks will have to be picked out. We'll teach young Oliver to do that, shall we, boys?" Again, to Oliver's surprise, the boys burst out laughing. Fagin turned to Oliver. "Would you like to pick the marks out?" "Yes, sir." This answer also made the boy laugh. "He as green as grass," exclaimed Charlie Bates. The breakfast was a merry one. When it was over, Fagin, in high spirits, asked the Dodger and his companion, "Shall we show Oliver our game, boys?" He turned to Oliver. "Would you like to play a funny game, my dear?" "Oh, yes, sir." They played a strange game. Fagin put a watch in one pocket and a pocket book in another. He pretended that he was an old gentleman out for a walk. Now and then he stopped pretending that he was looking in a shop window. The Dodger and Charlie Bates crept after him. Like shadows, they crept after him. When Fagin stopped They stopped. When Fagin moved, they moved. Suddenly, the dodger stepped on Fagin's foot. Charlie Batch pushed the old man from behind. In that moment, the boys snatched the watch and the pocketbook out of Fagin's pocket. It was done so quickly that Oliver could not believe his eyes. But Fagin was so funny that Oliver had to laugh. He laughed till he cried. They played this game several times. Then Fagin said to Oliver, "Now you try, my dear." He put a silk handkerchief in his pocket. "See if you can take this out without my knowing it." Oliver was eager to please the old man. He crept up behind him. Then, as the dodger had done, he held the bottom of Fagin's pocket with one hand. With the other, he snatched the handkerchief. "It is gone?" asked Fagin in surprise. "Look, sir, I have got it." "You are clever boy, my dear," Fagin told him, rubbing his hands. "Here's a shilling for you. If you go on like this, you will be a great man, Oliver." Again the old man rubbed his hands and gave a wicked smile. Then he went on, "But you have a lot to learn first. You had better begin by picking the marks out of those handkerchiefs. Come here, I will show you how to do it." Oliver was soon busy over this task. Chapter 6 Stop Thief. For several days, Oliver remained in the Fagin room, busy over his task. That merry game was played again and again. However, Oliver began to feel the need of fresh air. He asked Fagin to let him go out with the dodger and Charlie Bats when they went out to work. At last, Fagin agreed. Late one morning, the three boys set out together. The dodger and his companion walked very slowly. They stopped very often. Are they going to work or not? Oliver wondered. Then suddenly the dodger stopped to look over there. He said, pointing to an old man who was standing in front of a bookstall. The old man was reading a book in which he seemed deeply interested. "What's the matter?" asked Oliver. "Shh, you stand here. Come on, Charlie." The dodger Charlie Bats walked quietly up the old man. They looked around them. The street was empty except for Oliver. The dodger put his hand into the old man's pocket and drew up his handkerchief. At that moment, Oliver understood all. The boys were thieves. Their merry game had been practiced in stealing. Fagin had been teaching him to steal. Oliver stood there, terrified. Then he began to run away as fast as he could. At that moment, the old gentleman put his hand into his pocket. His handkerchief was not there. He looked round and saw Oliver running away. Stop thief, he shouted. He ran after him. The dodger and Charlie Bates heard the shout. Stop thief, they also shouted. People come out of their houses. "Stop thief," they shouted, and some began to run after Oliver. Soon a great crowd was running after the boy. Oliver ran as fast as he could. His heart was filled with terror. Sweat poured down his face. He could hardly breathe. Nearer and nearer the crowd came. A man hit Oliver on the head. This made the poor boy fall down on the pavement. A large crowd stood round him. "Stand back! Give him air!" the old gentleman cried, pushing his way to the front. A policeman came up. He seized Oliver by the collar and pulled him to his feet. "It was not me, sir," cried poor Oliver. "It was two other boys." "Was it?" asked the policeman. shaking him roughly. "Don't hurt him," cried the old gentleman. "Oh no, I won't hurt him," the policeman said, shaking Oliver still harder. "Come on, I know you young devil. Come on to the police station." Oliver was dragged away to the police station. "Sever him right," many said, but the old gentleman was full of pity for the boy and he followed him to the police station. Oliver and the old gentleman were taken in front of the judge. Mr. Fand, the judge was in a bad temper that morning. The old gentleman, whose name was Mr. Brownlow, began to tell his story. "I was standing in front of a bookstore when—" "Hold your tongue, sir," the judge cried. He turned to the policeman. "Now, officer, what's all his about?" The policeman told his story. He ended by saying, "I searched the boy, but I found nothing on him." Mr. Brownlow began the judge to be merciful. "The boy has been hurt," he said. "I am afraid that he's ill. I will that's only one of his tricks." The judge said. "What's your name?" he asked Oliver. Oliver tried to answer, but his tongue failed him. He was deathly pale. The room seemed to be going round and round. "Where do you live?" asked Mr. Brownlow in a kind voice. "Have you a father or a mother?" "No, sir, they are dead," Oliver answered. Then he fainted. "He is only pretending," the judge said, "but he won't deceive me." "Oh no, I am used to such tricks." "Take him away, officer. He will go to prison for 3 months." The policeman was carrying Oliver away when a man came rushing into the room. "Stop, stop," he shouted. "Don't take that boy away." "Turn this man out," cried the judge. "I must speak, sir. I will speak. I saw it all. I am the keepers of the bookstore. The boys stole and handkerchief. I saw them. This boy had nothing to do with the thief. He is innocent. Why did not you come and say so before?" "I could not. I had to find someone to look after my store. I come as quickly as I could." The judge turned angrily toward Mr. Brownlow. "Next time, be sure of your facts before you come here. The boy is free. Clear the court." Kind-hearted Mr. Brownlow went out at once to look for Oliver. He found the boy lying to the pavement outside the police station. Oliver was deathly pale and was shaking like a leaf. The old gentleman called a carriage. He laid Oliver gently on the seat. Then he ordered the driver to drive to his house in Penton Villa. Chapter 7. Where is Oliver? "Where is Oliver?" Fagin asked anxiously when the Artful Dodger and Charlie Bates returned. The two boys looked at each other but said not a word. "Where's Oliver?" shouted Fagin angrily. He seized the Dodger by the collar and shook him hard. "The police got him." "The police!" screamed Fagin. He shook the Dodger harder. The boy broke free and seized the frog to defend himself. Fagin picked up a bottle of beer and threw it at the boy's head. The bottle just missed. It struck the door and broke. The beer splashed another member of the gang who was just entering. This was Bill Six, followed by his dog. Six was a big, strong fellow about 35 years old. He was ragged and dirty. One of his eyes had been blackened in a recent fight. He was the most brutal and wicked looking of them all. Six gave his dog a kick. "Lie down, you ugly devil," he said. The dog crept under a chair. "Well, Fagin, you wicked old thief, what's all this about? Quarreling with the lads, I see. One of these days they will murder you, serve you right, you wicked devil." Fagin gave him an evil look, but he spoke to him quietly. "You are in a bad temper this morning, Bill. So are you throwing bottles of beer about?" Sick laid his hat on the table. "Give me a drink, and don't put any poison in it." Then the doctor told Sick that Oliver had been arrested. Fagin was very worried. "The boy may tell the police about us," he said. "That will mean trouble, serious trouble." Sick laughed. "Yes, it will mean serious trouble for you, Fagin. It will mean worse trouble for you, Bill. 6. Worse for you than for me," Fagin told him. Everyone was silent. At last, Sick said, "We are safe if the boy has not told them anything. Somebody must go to the police station and find out what happened." Fagin nodded. He looked around and asked, "Who will go to the police station and find out?" Nobody said a word. They were all afraid to the police station. At that moment, there were footsteps on the stairs. The door opened. A brightly dressed young woman came in. This was Nancy. Nancy was only 20 years of age, but she looked thin, pale, and tired. Nancy loved Bill 6 dearly, although he treated her cruelly. "You have come just at the right moment, my dear," Fagin said. "You will go, won't you?" "Where?" "Only to the police station, my dear." "No, I won't," Nancy said quickly. "You are the very person for it. Nobody knows anything about you there, and I don't want them to either. I tell you, I am not going. You can find somebody else." "She will go," Fagin said. 6 with a cruel look at Nancy. Sick was right. Nancy went to the police station. There she played her part very well. "Oh, my poor little brother Oliver. Where is he? What have they done to him? Kind sir, tell me." She begged the policeman. The policeman was touched by her sorrow. He told her how Oliver had been taken away by Mr. Brownlow, where he could not say, but somewhere in Pentonville. At once, Nancy carried these news to Fagin and his gang. Bill 6 was alarmed. He called his dog and left at once. "If that boy tells what he knows, we are all in trouble, the whole lot of us," he said as he left. Fagin was also alarmed. "The boy must be found at once. Nancy, my dear daughter, and you too. Charlie, go out and find him. Don't come back till you have found him, and bring him back with you." With a shaking hand, he unlocked a drawer. "Here's money for you. Don't come back here. I am leaving for the other place. You know where to find me. Go at once. Get that boy." So saying, Fagin pushed them all out of the room. He locked the door from its hiding place. He took his box to Teaser. He put it in a bag with some other things and hurried from the house. Chapter 8. Oliver finds a home at Mr. Brownlow's, but not for long. For a week, Oliver lay seriously ill in Mr. Brownlow's house. He was too ill to know what was happening around him. He knew nothing of the kindness of Mr. Brownlow, who sat for hours at his bedside, and he did not know how carefully Mrs. Badwin, the housekeeper, was looking after him. At last he was able to get up. Mrs. Badwin dressed him in a new suit that Mr. Brownlow had bought. She carried him downstairs to sit by the fire in Mr. Brownlow's room. There he told them his sad story. They were filled with horror. The police must be told, said Mr. Brownlow, but Oliver knows so little about London that he could not say where Fagin's house was. That some evening, Mr. Grimwig, an old friend of Mr. Brownlow's, come to visit him. Mr. Grimwig was a very kind-hearted gentleman, but he liked to pretend that he was hard-hearted. "This is the boy I told you about," Mr. Brownlow said to his friend. "So, this is the boy," said Mr. Grimwig with a sharp look at Oliver. "How are you, boy?" "Much better now, thank you, sir." Mr. Brownlow then asked Oliver to go downstairs and tell Mrs. Badwin that they were ready for tea. When Oliver had gone, he asked his friend, "He is a nice looking boy, is not he?" "Well, he looks all right, but you never know. I should not trust him after all. You don't really know him. He may be telling lies. I should not be surprised if he was. I am sure he is not well. We shall see. Does he remind you of anybody?" "Well, yes, he does. Our old friend Leaford, who died in Rome. That was 10 or 11 years ago, was not it?" Before Mr. Brownlow could answer, Mrs. Badwin came in with the tea. Oliver followed her, carrying a packle of books. "The boy from the bookshop has just brought these," she told Mr. Brownlow, taking the parcel from Oliver. "Is the boy still there?" "He is gone, sir." "I am sorry. I have some books for his to take back, and I wanted to pay him for these." "Send Oliver with the books," Mr. Grimwig said suddenly. "Yes, do let me take them, please, sir," said Oliver eagerly. "I will run all the way there." Mr. Brownlow hesitated. Then a look from Mr. Grimwig made him say, "Yes, you shall go. The books are on the table beside my bed. Fetch them here." Oliver was delighted. He fetched the books. "Now," Mr. Brownlow told him, "you must say that you have brought these books back, and that you have come to pay the money I own, £4.10. Here's a £5 note. There will be 10 shillings change." "I won't be 10 minutes, sir," said Oliver. He put the money carefully in his pocket. He placed the books under his arm. Then, with a respectful bow, he hurried off. "Let me see. He will be back in 20 minutes for certain," said Mr. Brownlow. He took out his watch and placed it on the table. It will be dark by then. Do you really expected him to come back? Asked Mr. Grimwig. Yes, don't you? Mr. Brownlow said with a smile. No, I do not. The boy has a new suit on his back. He has some valuable books under his arm and he has a 5 pound note in his pocket. He won't come back. He will join his old friends in the gang and he will laugh at you. If that boy come back, I will eat my hat. Yes, sir, I will eat my hat. With these words, Mr. Grimwig drew his chair nearer the table. There the two friends sat, with the watch in front of them. It grew dark, but they still sat there waiting. They waited and waited, but Oliver did not come back. Meanwhile, Oliver was hurrying toward the bookshop. He was happy as never before. How wonderful life had become for him. How kind and good Mr. Brownlow was, and dear Mrs. Badwin. Oliver's happy thoughts were suddenly interrupted. A young woman suddenly shouted, "Oh, my brother, my dear little Oliver!" She threw her arms around him and held him fast. Oliver struggled to get free. "Let me go," he carried. Then he saw the woman's face. "Why, it's Nancy. You see, he knows me," the woman said to some passers-by who had stopped to stare. "What's he done?" a man asked. "He ran away from home a month ago," Nancy told him. "He's been living with a gang of thieves. His poor mother, her heart's broken." "Go home, you watch," a woman shouted. "Go home to your poor mother." "It's not true," poor Oliver cried. "What's all this about?" cried a big, strong fellow coming forward with his dog. "Why, it's young Oliver. Come home to your mother, you little devil. Come on." "No, no," cried Oliver, struggling hard to get free. "Where did you get those books?" "You stole them, did not you?" Six asked. So saying, he snatched the books from Oliver and hit him hard on the head. Poor Oliver could struggle no longer. His strength suddenly left him. Bill, sick, and Nancy dragged the boy through some dark and dirty streets. At last they come to a house which appeared to be empty. "Too late," said the notice on the door. Six looked carefully around before he opened the door. They dragged Oliver along a dark passage into a back room. There, Fagin was waiting with the artful Dodger and Charlie Bats. Chapter 9. Fagin and his gang give Oliver a warm welcome. "Delight to see you back, and looking so well," Fagin said. He rubbed his hands and laughed heavily. "Dear boy, why don't you let us know when you were coming? If we had known, we had have got something very nice for your supper." At these words, the Dodger and Charlie Bats roared with laughter. The Dodger went close to Oliver. "My, look at his suit, Fagin, and his books. Quite a little gentleman, is not he?" He snatched the 5 pound note from Oliver's pocket. At once, Fagin snatched it from him while Six cried, "That's mine, Fagin." "No, my dear, it's mine. You shall have the books. Hand it over, or I will take the boy back." Fagin hesitated. "Hand it over, I say, you wicked old thief." So saying, Six seized the note. "You can have the books," he told Fagin. "Oh, no, no," carried Oliver. They belong to the old gentleman. He was so good to me. Please, please send them back to him and the money as well. Keep me here if you like, but please send them back to him. He will think I have stolen them, and the old lady too. Oliver fell on his knees in front of Fagin and begged him to have mercy. Ha ha ha, laughed Fagin, rubbing his hands. You are right, my dear. They will think you have stolen them. Ha ha ha. Fagin and his gang roared with laughter. Suddenly, Oliver jumped wildly. He rushed out of the room. Help, 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 he screamed. Fagin the dogger and Charlie Bats rushed after him. Hold the dog, Bill. He will tear the boy to bits, screamed Nancy. Serve him right, growled Sick, ready to go after Oliver. Nancy tried to hold him back. You will kill the boy, she cried. Oh, don't. I will kill you as well, growled Sick. At that moment, Fagin and his two pupils returned, dragging Oliver with them. So, you wanted to run away, my dear, did you? Fagin said. Perhaps you wanted to call and police. Oh, you need a lesson, my young master, and you are going to get it now. Fagin picked up a heavy stick and struck Oliver hard. He was raising his arm to strike again when Nancy rushed at him. She pulled the stick from Fagin's hand and threw it into the fire. Leave the boy alone, she screamed. If you don't, I will go to the police myself. I will tell them such things that they will hang you. You wicked old devil. Come, come, Nancy, my dear, let us have civil words. Civil words. Yes, you deserve civil words. You made me go out and steal when I was half that boy's age. For 14 years I have been on the streets stealing for. Well, 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 if you have, my dear, it's been you living, my living, yes, and the cold and dirty streets have been my home. You drove me there, and you will keep me there till I die. If you say any more, I will do worse than that, my dear, Fagin told her with an evil smile. Nancy gave a wild cry. Then she threw herself on Fagin as if she would tear him to pieces. She seized her and dragged her back. Shut your mouth or I will shut it for you. Sick said. He struck Nancy a cruel blow in the face. Nancy screamed. He struck again. Then he threw the poor girl into a corner of the room. She lay there quite still. Fagin wiped the sweat from his forehead. He turned to Charlie Betts. Charlie, my dear, show our dear Oliver to his bedroom. I suppose he won't be wearing his new suit tomorrow, Charlie asked as he led poor Oliver away. Certainly not. Bring it to me. I will take care of it. I will take care of him as well, Fagin said, rubbing his hands and smiling his evil smile. Chapter 10. Bill 6 takes Oliver to break into a house. Oliver was kept in a damp, dark room for many days. Then, one morning, Fagin told him that he would be taken to Bill 6's house that night. To stay there, sir? Oliver asked in fear. No, no, my dear, I am only lending you to Bill. We will never let you leave us. Don't be afraid, Fagin told the boy with an evil smile. What shall I do there? Oliver asked, trembling. Ask no questions and you will hear no lies. Bill will tell you they will be coming to fetch you tonight. Just wait quietly. As Fagin was leaving the room, he told poor Oliver, be careful, my dear. Bill Six is a rough fellow. He will kill you if you give him any trouble. Whatever happens, keep your mouth shut. Do whatever Bill tells you, remember that. That night, Oliver was sitting alone, reading by candlelight. Somebody knocked at the door. Oliver's heart beat fast. Who's there? He asked in a trembling voice. It's me, Nancy. Nancy hurried in looking deathly pale. Bill sent me. She said, come on, Oliver. We must not keep Bill waiting. What does he want me for? For no harm, Nancy said, turning her eyes away. A sudden thought came to Oliver. While Nancy was taking him through the street, he would try to run away. Nancy read the boy's thoughts. Oliver, she said, if you don't come quietly, Bill will beat me again. Look what he did to me last night. She showed the boy her neck and arms that were black and blue from cruel blows. Come on, she said. We must hurry. Nancy took Oliver's hand and led him outside where a carriage was waiting. She pulled Oliver inside with her. The driver wiped his horses and drove fast to Bill Six's house. Did he come quietly? Was Bill's first question. Like a lamb, Nancy told him. If he had not, Six took up a pistol which was laying on the table. Do you know what this is? Yes, sir. Six pointed the pistol at the boy's head. Listen to me, he said. If you try to get away when you are out with me, I will blow your brain out. Do you understand? Yes, sir, said Oliver in great fear. Six turned to Nancy. Bring us some supper now, he ordered her. The next evening, Six drove with Oliver out of the city. It was dark when they started and it was raining hard. On and on they drove, that many muddy lanes. At last they reached a lonely house. No light shone in the windows and the house looked empty. Six kicked the door open. Bring us a light, Toby, he shouted. Toby cracked. The housebreaker came with a light. He led Six and the boy into a dark room where a smoky fire was burning. Ha! He exclaimed with satisfaction. You have got the boy. I see. He looked Oliver up and down. He's the right size. He will do, he told Sykes. Give me a drink, said Bill Sykes. Then he asked, is everything ready? Toby pushed two pistols into his pocket. Ready, he said. Come on. We have no time to waste. I have been watching the house. They were all asleep hours ago. Sykes took Oliver's hand. Toby took his other one. Then the two thieves set out, with Oliver between them. After walking for about a mile, they come to a large house surrounded by a high wall. Like a cat, Toby Crackett climbed to the top of the wall. Sykes lifted Oliver up and Toby pulled him to the top of the wall. They jumped down to the grass on the other side of the wall. Sykes followed them. The three of them crept forward toward the big house. Suddenly, Oliver gave a cry. At last, he understood all. The two men were house breakers. They were going to break into the house. They had brought him there to help them. He had to help them to rob, perhaps to murder somebody. The poor boy nearly fainted at the thought. His leg would not hold him up. He snapped down on the grass. Get up, Sykes hissed. Get up, or I will blow your brain out. Let me go. Please let me go. Oliver begged piteously. Sykes would have shot the boy there and then, but Toby struck the pistol out of his hand. You fool, he said. Do you want to wake up everybody up? He shook Oliver. Come on, or I will knock your head off. The three of them made their way towards the house. Toby pointed and said, There's the window, Bill. The window was small and about 6 feet above the ground. You are going through that window. Sykes hissed in Oliver's ear. Then Sykes climbed on Toby's back. He lifted Oliver up and put him feet first toward the window. He handed the boy a lamp. Walk straight on till you come to the front door. Open it for us. Go on now, and no noise, mind. He gave Oliver a push. Oliver moved forward. I will run upstairs and wake them up, he thought to himself, but Sykes pointed his pistol straight at home. Do what you are told, or I will shoot, he hissed fiercely. Oliver took a step forwards. Suddenly, Sykes gave a shout. Back, quick! Oliver saw a light in front of him. Two men were there, half dressed but holding guns. Bang! Someone had fired. Oliver jumped back toward the window. Sykes seized him by the collar and pulled him up. Then he ran away as fast as he could, with the boy over his shoulder. Oliver had been shot. He lay senseless on Sykes' shoulder. He did not know who the two thieves took him over the surrounding wall. Chapter 11. Oliver is left to die in a ditch. Sykes ran to the darkness. Behind him come shouts and the barking of dogs. In front of him was Toby Crackit running as fast as he could. Stop, stop, Sykes shouted to Crackit. Give me a hand with this boy. Toby ran on without answering. Stop, or I will put a bullet through your back, shouted Sykes. Toby stopped. Leave the boy. They will catch us if you don't. Sykes laid the senseless boy in a ditch. The two men then jumped over a hedge and were soon far away. The men who came after the robbers were two servants from the big house. They were Mr. Giles, the head servant, and Mr. Bittles, who worked under him. It was not long before they stopped running. I think we should go back home, said fat Mr. Giles breathlessly. I agree with you, Mr. Giles, Mr. Bittles said. He looked pale and frightened. Both looked pale and frightened. They went back to the house. Poor Oliver lay in the ditch. A sharp wind was blowing, but Oliver felt nothing. It began to rain heavily. Still, Oliver lay there, feeling nothing. At last, his senses came back to him. He opened his eyes and moved. The movement gave him great pain. His left arm left heavy and useless. His sleeve was wet with blood. The poor boy struggled to sit up and then to stand. He knew that he would die if he did not get help. He tried to walk. He came to the road and staggered on. At last he saw a big house, the house that Sykes and Crackit had tried to break into. Weakly he staggered to the front door and gave a faint knock. The servants were then in the kitchen having tea. Mr. Giles was telling the cook and the housemaid the story of the robbery. They were listening in terror to his fearful tale. It was about 2:30 when I woke up, said Mr. Giles. I thought I heard a noise. You are imagining things. Giles, I said to myself. I turned over in bed and was almost asleep when I did hear a noise. Oh, exclaimed the cook and the house's maid together. They drew their chair closer together. Somebody is trying to break in. I said to myself. Mr. Giles went on. We will all be murdered in our beds. They will cut poor Brittle's throat. Everyone looked at Brittle, whose face showed his great fear. I took up a stool and went into Brittle's room. Wake up, Brittles, I said. We are dead. Man, I think. But don't be frightened. Was he frightened? Asked the cook, who knew he was as brave as nearly as brave as I was. I should have died if I had been there, the housemaid said. You are a woman, Mr. Brittle said. Well, continued Mr. Gill, we men were not afraid, of course. We went downstairs like this. He showed the two women how they had made their way downstairs. Then Oliver's faint knock was heard. Everyone suddenly turned pale. That was a knock. Open the door. Somebody, Mr. Giles ordered in a trembling voice. Nobody moved. It's strange. Somebody knocking at this hour. Open the door, Brittle. I will come with you. Slowly, Brittle moved toward the door. Slowly, Giles followed him. The two women followed the man. Then they all began to speak in loud voice to show that they were strong in number. They also pinched the dogs to make them bark. Beetles opened the door. There stood poor little Oliver Twist, almost fainting. Mr. Gill pulled Oliver inside the house. In great excitement, he shouted upstairs, Here he is, ma'am. Here's one of the thieves. He's wounded. I shout him, ma'am. A young lady appeared at the top of the stairs. Shh, you will frighten my aunt. Giles is the man badly wounded. He's dying, miss, said Brittle. Won't you like to see him? Wait a minute while I speak to my aunt, said the young lady, going away. She was soon back again. Carry him upstairs and put him in your bed. Giles, Brittles, you must go for the doctor. Would not you like to take a look at him? Asked a Brittles again. Not now. Giles treated him kindly, she said, and went away. Giles carried Oliver upstairs very carefully, very gently. He laid the poor boy on his bed. Chapter 12. A Man Called Monks. 2 days later, Fagin was in his room, looking very anxious. The Dodger and Charlie Bates were also there, playing cards. Suddenly, they heard a knock at the street door. Go and see who it is, Dodger. The Dodgers who come back with Toby Crackit. Where's Bill? Asked Toby, looking round the room. What do you mean? Said Fagin, starting from his chair. You don't mean to say, Toby began. Man, screamed Fagin. Where are they? Sykes and their boy, where are they? Why have not they come back? There was some trouble. I know, that Fagin said, pulling a newspaper from his pocket and pointing to it. What exactly happened? He asked Crackit in great anger. One of the servants shot the boy. We carried him away between us, but then the whole place come after us, dogs as well. We had leave the boy. Where? In a ditch, alive or dead, I did not know. Fagin gave a wild scream and rushed out of the house like a madman. He ran through the streets to Bill Sykes' house. He found Nancy there, alone. He told her what Toby had said. Then he asked her, "Where do you think Bill is now, Nancy, my dear?" Nancy did not answer. She began to cry in a hopeless way. "There's that poor little boy too left in a ditch, Nancy. I hope he's dead," Nancy cried wildly. "He is better dead than alive among us. That boy is worth hundreds of pounds to me." Fagin screamed, wild with anger. "Hundreds, perhaps thousands, if I can make the boy a thief, Monks will give me." He stopped suddenly. He realized that he had said too much. "Monks, who is Monks?" asked Nancy in surprise. "Why should he pay you?" Fagin's manner changed. He rubbed his hands together and said, "Nancy, my dear, don't take any notice of what I said. I am too worried over our dear little Oliver, and I hardly know what I am saying." "I hope Bill's safe," Nancy said, miserable. "If Toby got away, then I am sure Bill did. Bill is 10 times cleverer than Toby Crackit." "You are right, my dear. I feel sure that Bill got away. When he comes back, let me know. He will tell us where to find the boy." So saying, Fagin hurried away. No sooner had he gone than Nancy jumped to her feet. Secretly, she followed Fagin. Fagin entered his house, not knowing that Nancy was close behind him. There he found a man waiting for him. This was Monks, a tall, dark man with an evil face. His left cheek was marked by an ugly red scare. "Where have you been?" "I have been waiting on hour," Monks said angrily. "I had to go out on the business of yours, my dear," Fagin told him, rubbing his hands together. "Have you found the boy?" Fagin told Monks the story that Toby Crackit had told. "Why did you send the boy out? Why did not you keep him here? You could have made a thief of him here," said Monks angrily. "You are wrong there, my dear. The boy was hard to train. You remember what happened when I sent him out with a Dodger and Charlie Bates. The girl got him back for us, but now she's changed. She wants to help my boy." "Kill the girl then. Perhaps I shall one day," Fagin said with an evil smile, "but not just now. She is still useful. We shall have to wait a little. When the boy hardens, she will lose her fondness for him. I have seen this happen before." Fagin paused a moment and then he went on. "Trust old Fagin, Monks. If the boy is alive, I will make a thief of him for you. If he is dead—" "Dead!" screamed Monks, turning deathly pale. "Dead! If he is dead, it's not my fault. I tell you, it's not my fault." With shaking hands, he seized Fagin's arm. "Do you hear me? I had nothing to do with that shooting." Monks was terrified. In his terror, he looked hardly human. He was as white as a ghost. The scare on his cheek burned a bright red. His eyes were wild. Suddenly he cried out, "What's that?" "What's where?" asked Fagin. "There," replied Monks, pointing to the wall. "I saw the shadow of a woman on that wall." They rushed outside to see if anyone was there. There was no one. The passage was empty. The house was silent. "I saw it. It was a woman. She must have been listening to us," Monks cried in great excitement and fear. "You could not have seen anything. There's nobody in the house but Toby Crackit and the boys. They are fast asleep. Come and see." Fagin led Monks from room to room. Nobody was there but the three thieves, and they were sleeping soundly. "You see, you were mistaken," Fagin said. "Perhaps I was," monks said, but he was shaking with fear as he went away. Chapter 13. Oliver is saved by Mrs. Maylie and Miss Rose. In the dining room of the big house, two ladies were sitting at the breakfast table. Mr. Giles, now neatly dressed in a black suit, was waiting upon them. One of the ladies was old, the other was a lovely young girl of 17. Brittle has been gone a long time, the old lady said to Giles. Giles pulled out his watch. An hour and 13 minutes, ma'am. At that moment, a carriage stopped at the garden gate. A fat gentleman got out of it. He hurried into the room. I never heard of such of things, he exclaimed in excitement. My dear Mrs. Maylie, my dear Miss Rose, what a terrible shock for you. Oh, please, Dr. Losburn, will you come upstairs and look at the poor creature? Rose begged. Of course, said the doctor. Will you show me the way, Giles? Giles led the doctor to his patient. The doctor was absent for a long time. A large flat box was fetched out of his carriage. The bell in the bedroom was rung again and again. The servants went hurrying up and down the stairs. At last, the doctor came to the dining room to speak to the ladies. This is an extraordinary thing, Mrs. Maylie, he said. He is not in danger, I hope. The old lady said, no, he will be well again in a week or two. The doctor informed them. Then he asked them, have you seen this thief? No. Has not Giles told you anything about him? No. Would you like to see him if I come with you? Yes, I had liked to, and I had liked Rose to come as well if she will. The doctor took the ladies upstairs to Giles's room. He pointed toward the bed. There lies the wicked thief, he said. The two ladies looked. To their astonishment, they saw a child there, fast asleep. A mere child, his face was white. His wounded arm lay across his chest. His head rested on his other arm. The ladies crept softly to his bed. Miss Rose bent over him with a gentle hand. She brushed his hair from his forehead. The boy moved and smiled in his sleep, as if he felt her kindness. What can this mean? Mrs. Maylie asked. This poor child is no thief. He is so young, Rose said with tears in her eyes. Let's go into the next room, Dr. Losburn said to the ladies. We must not wake him up. There, Miss Rose continued. Think how young he is. Perhaps he has never known a mother care. Perhaps he has never had a home. Poor boy. Oh, auntie, don't let them send this boy to prison. My dear, said the old lady, do you think that I would harm one hair of his head? I have not much longer to live. I must help all I can. What can I do to help this boy? Dr. Losburn. Let me think, he kind-hearted doctor said. For some moment he looked thoughtful. Then he asked, can we trust the servants to say nothing about the boy? Yes, Mrs. Maylie told him. They will do as I tell them. Good, said the doctor. But first of all, let us hear what the boy has to say when he wakes up. If we find him innocent, we will help him. But if we find that he is guilty, then we must hand him over to the police. Do you agree? The two ladies readily agreed, for they were sure that Oliver was innocent. Oliver slept and for many hours. In the evening, when he woke up, he was very weak, but he was anxious to tell his story. The ladies wept as they heard of his miserable life. The kind-hearted doctor tried hard to hide his tears. they did their best to comfort the boy. Oliver slept that night with a smile on his lips. He had found a home. When the police come to ask questions, Miss Giles and Brittles were ready with their story. Oliver had accidentally wounded himself while playing with a gun. He had nothing to do with the robbery. The housebreakers were two evil-looking men. The servants, with the help of Dr. Losburn, told their story while the police believed them. Oliver was left in peace. Chapter 14. Oliver finds peace and happiness with the Melee. Oliver was ill for 10 days. Then, little by little, he began to get better. Something, however, was worrying the boy. Rose asked him what it was. I wish I could see Mr. Brownlow, Oliver told her. I would like to tell him that I did not steal his books. When you are stronger, you shall go and see him, Rose promised. Not long after this, Dr. Losburn took Oliver to London to look for Mr. Brownlow. How fast Oliver's heart beat when they entered the street where Mr. Brownlow lived. That's it, he cried breathlessly, pointing to a large white house. The carriage stopped. On Mr. Brownlow's gate was a notice. The house to let. Oliver almost wept with disappointment. Mr. Brownlow had gone away. His house was empty. Perhaps the people next door can tell us where he is, Dr. Losburn said, but the neighbors could only say that Mr. Brownlow had gone away 6 weeks before. They also said his housekeeper and his friend Mr. Grimwig had gone with him. What could Oliver and the kind-hearted doctor do? They had to turn back home. Oliver was bitterly disappointed. However, as the carriage drew nearer Mrs. Mary's house, his spirits rose. He was going home. There he was sure to find love and kindness. Indeed, Mrs. Mary and Rose loved the boy. So did kind-hearted Dr. Losburn. At the beginning of spring, the Mary took Oliver to their house in the country. There the fruit trees were in blossom. The garden and the fields were full of flowers, and how the birds sang. Oliver had never known such peace and such happiness. Every morning Oliver went to an old gentleman who taught him to read and to write. He went for walks with Rose and Mrs. Mary. In the evening they sat together and talked, or Rose read aloud to them. Often Rose played the piano and sang. Old Mrs. Mary loved to listen to his. So did Oliver. Every night he slept peacefully in a clean bed in his own room. 3 months passed by like this. There were months of perfect happiness for Oliver Twist. How much longer could this happiness last? Not longer. The artful dogger had found out where Oliver was living. Fagin was after the boy. With Fagin there was the evil Mr. Monks. For some mysterious purpose, this Mr. Monks wanted to make a criminal of Oliver. One evening Oliver saw them both. It happened like this. Oliver had been reading in his room at a table near the window. It was late in the evening and he fell asleep over his book. Sleeping, he had a fearful dream. He dreamed that he was back again in Fagin's room. He woke up with a cry of terror, and there on the other side of the window, 2 evil faces were staring at him. Fagin's and a face with a red scare. Oliver screamed for help. Giles, Brittles, and Dr. Losburn come running in, with Rose and Mrs. Mary. It's Fagin. Fagin's out there, cried the terrified boy. They all rushed into the garden. Although they searched everywhere, they could not find the 2 criminals. Perhaps it was a dream, my boy, said the doctor. No, no, I saw them. Them. The doctor was puzzled. I cannot understand, he said afterwards to Mrs. Maylie and Rose. Why Fagin is still after the boy? There must be a reason, and a strong reason. And why is that man with the scare after Oliver? There's something very strange behind all these. I wish I know what it was. Dr. Losborn was right. There was something very strange behind all this. Time would show what it was. Chapter 15. Mr. Bamble has a visitor. Mr. Bamble now come into the story again. Mr. Bamble, who had been master of the poor house when Oliver was there, still held that high position, but now he was a most unhappy man. The cause of his unhappiness was his wife, whom he had married recently. Mrs. Bamble had been the matron in the poor house. She had seemed to Mr. Bamble a timed and obedient woman. That was before he had married her. How she had changed after the marriage. Mr. Bamble was afraid of her sharp tongue. He was frightened of her heavy hand. Mrs. Bamble often beat her husband as he had beaten the boys. Mr. Bamble's life was now a miserable one. Mr. Bamble was sitting alone in his room at the poor house when a visitor came in. This was a tall, dark man with a red scar on his left cheek. His clothes were covered with dust as if he had travelled a long way. He strongly looked into the passage to see if anybody was there. He closed the door carefully. Then he said, I have come here for something information. I shall pay you well for it. He threw some gold coins on the table, saying, Here, take these. You will have more if you can help me. At the sight of the gold, Mr. Bamble's eyes shone. He quickly picked the coins up and put them into his pocket. Can you remember 12 years ago, 12 years last winter, when a boy was born here? The stranger asked. Many boys were born then, Mr. Bamble told him. This boy was pale and thin, a frightened looking boy. You sent him to work for a coffin maker. He did not work there long but ran away. Oh, you mean Oliver Twist. I remember him very well. The boy, little wretch, he was the boy who asked for more. I don't want to hear about him. I want to know something about his mother. Where is the old woman who was there when she died? She died about 3 months ago. The stranger seemed pleased to hear this. He turned to leave. Mr. Bamble did not want him to leave so soon. He hoped to get more money out of him. Don't go yet, he said. I have remembered something else. Tell me quickly. Mr. Bamble was with the old woman when she died. She told my wife something about the young woman, Oliver's mother. What? Asked the stranger anxiously. I don't know. You will have to talk to my wife. She can tell you. She has the young woman's locket. What's inside it? 2 locks of hair and a wedding ring with the name Agnes on it. Bring her to me. When? Tomorrow at 9 in the evening. I will be waiting for you here, said the stranger as, with shaking fingers, he wrote an address on a piece of paper. See that she brings that locket with her. I will pay her well, and you keep your mouth shut. Do you hear? The stranger looked so wild that Mr. Bamble was frightened. We will be there, he said, looking at the address. What name shall we ask for? Monks, replied the stranger. Then he hurried away. Chapter 16. Mr. and Mrs. Bamble have a talk with monks. At 8:30 the next evening, Mr. Bamble and his wife were walking through a poor district near the river. A thunderstorm was raging. Both of them were frightened. The thunder and the lightning were frightening. More frightening still was the district in which they were. It was the hiding place of criminals. They come at last to the address that monks had given. This had once been a warehouse. Now the lower part of it had sunk into the water. The upper part seemed likely to follow at any moment. An upstairs window opened and a voice called, "Stay there, I will be down in a minute." A few moments later, Monks opened the door. "Come in, hurry up," he said. Mrs. Bamble walked in, showing no sign of fear. Mr. Bamble followed, looking frightened. Monks locked the door and led them up through some broken stairs. The thunder shook the building and the lightning blinded them. Monks led them into a miserable room, dimly lighted by a lamp. The room held 3 chairs and a broken table. "Nothing more. Sit down," said Monks. "There's no time to waste." He looked hard at the Mrs. Bamble. "I want the full story of that old woman," he told her. "What's it worth to you?" "I cannot stay till I have heard, and I am not talking till I know how much I will get." "Speak out. You may get £20. 21. Mr. Bamble said quickly. "Shut up, you old fool," said his wife. "Make it 25 and I will talk," she told Monks. "Very well, go on." Mrs. Bamble began her story. "When old Sally died, I was with her. She told me about the young woman, Oliver Twist. Mother, old Sally robbed her." "Go on." "When she was dying, the young woman had asked old Sally to keep a locket for her. Sally then promised to give the locket to the boy. She never did. She kept it." "Where's the locket? Where's the £25? Monks counted the coins and placed them on the table. At once Mr. Bamble put out his hand to take the coins. Mrs. Bamble gave his hand a sharp slap. She took the coins herself and put them in her bag. Then she drew out of her pocket a small leather bag. She threw this on the table. "There you are," she said. Monks seized it. She tore it open the trembling hand. He pulled out a gold locket. Opening it, he found 2 locks of hair and a wedding ring. "Is this all?" "Yes." Monks suddenly ordered them. "Don't move. Sit where you are." With these words, he pushed the table to one side. Under it was an iron ring. Monks pulled at the ring. By so doing, he opened the trapdoor in the floor. "Come and have a look," he said. He held the lamp over the opening. Mrs. Bamble and her husband came near the hole and looked down. Below them was the river rushing rapidly along. Monks dropped the locket into the river and watched the water carry it away. "There," he cried joyfully, "that will never be seen again." He turned to Mr. Bamble and his wife. "Now you can get out of here, and keep your mouths shut. If not." Mr. Bamble and his wife made their way downstairs as quickly as they could. They were filled with fear. The thunder still rolled and the lightning still flashed, but they feared the storm less than they feared Monks. They hurried away through the rain and the darkness. Chapter 17. Nancy overhears a talk and goes to Rose Millie. Bill Sykes had returned home not long after Toby Crackit. Nancy was the only one who rejoiced at his return. Then Sykes had fallen ill. Nancy was the only one who remained at his side during his illness. She shocked after him with motherly care. Fagin and his gang never come near them since Bill could not work. He and Nancy were in need of money. Their need grew, but Fagin still kept away. When at last Fagin did come to see Bill, Bill was already much better. However, his bad temper was even worse. Ha, so you have come at last, he growled. Did you think I was dead? You wicked old thief. I should have died if the girl had not been here. And who brought the girl to you in the first place? Poor old Fagin. That's true, Nancy said. Look here, Sykes said. I need money, and I need it now. I have not got a penny on me. Fagin told him, but you have got plenty at home. You are making a mistake there, Bill. I have got nothing. I am a poor old man. I am. Shut up, you lying old devil, Sykes growled. Well, I will send the doctor with some tonight. No, you won't. I know you. Nancy will go back with you and you will give her the money at once. Nancy put on her hat and coat. She and Fagin left the house together. All the way, Fagin kept telling her, I am a poor man, Nancy. All my money has been spent on the boys. I like to have them round me, although they do treat me badly. They take all I have. I am a poor old man, my dear. When they reached Fagin's house, a man was waiting there for Fagin. He was a tall, dark man with a red scare on his left cheek. Monks exclaimed Fagin in surprise. Then he turned to Nancy. You stay here, my dear. I have some business to discuss with this gentleman. So, saying he led Monks upstairs. A few moments later, Nancy crept upstairs after them. She stood at the door and listened to what they were saying. As she listened, she grew paler and paler. She stayed there for about 10 minutes. Then she crept downstairs again. Fagin and Monks came downstairs soon afterwards. Monks went away at once. Fagin went to Nancy. Why, Nancy, my dear, how pale you are! He exclaimed. She gave no answer. Fagin gave her the money for Sykes and she left at once. Halfway down the street, her strength failed her. She sank down on the doorstep and stayed there for some time. Then she got up and hurried to Sykes' house. At first, the housebreaker did not notice her paleness. He sent her out to buy food and drink. Soon he was too drunk to notice anything. That evening, Nancy began to shake with fever. What's the matter? Sykes asked the poor girl. You look like a corpse. Matter? Nothing's the matter. What are you staring at me for? Sykes seized her arm and shook her roughly. Tell me what you have been doing, he shouted. Nothing, Bill. I don't feel well. Well, you stop looking like that. Change your face or I will change it for you. Sykes raised his fist to do so. Nancy drew back and tried to smile. Then she went to the table and poured him some wine. Drink this, she said. Sykes drank the wine quickly. That's better, he said. Some more, Nancy asked him without waiting for his answer. She poured out some more. Unseen by Sykes, she put a drug in the wine in order to make him sleep. Sykes drank. In 3 minutes, he fell back on the bed, fast asleep. Nancy hurried out. It was already dark. The church clock struck 10. She was late. Was she too late? Nancy began to run. At last, she reached her destination. This was a quiet hotel near Hyde Park. She went in and asked the porter, May I speak to Miss Melly, please? The porter looked her up and down. What do you want with Miss Melly? He asked her. Oh, please let me see her. It's very important. Nancy begged. The man softened at the sight of her sad face. He ran upstairs and soon come down again. Follow me, he told Nancy, and he led her to Miss Melly's room. There, filled with fear and shame, Nancy waited. Chapter 18. Nancy tells Rose Millie about monks and Fagin. I am Rose, Millie, a gentle voice said. Can I help you? Nancy looked up. That gentle voice touched her heart. The tears come into her eyes. You are in trouble, Rose said gently. Tell me what is the matter. Is the door shut? Nancy asked anxiously. There's nobody listening, is there? Oh no, why? I am putting my life in your hands. Nancy told her. That gang would murder me if they know that I had come. You won't tell anybody, will you? No, no. I have come about to young Oliver Twist. I am the girl who dragged him back to Fagin's when he was on his way to the bookshop. You. Yes, lady, I am that wicked creature. Nancy began to cry. Then she went on, oh lady, all my life has been spent among thieves. From the time when I was born, I have known nothing but evil, stealing, lying, drinking, and wars. Stop, stop, cried Rose. It breaks my heart to hear you say that. I pity you. How I pity you. Oh, lady, if there were more like you, there would be fewer like me. Poor Nancy said, you must listen to me. I have not much time. I must tell you what I have overheard. Do you know a man named Monks? Monks? No, I have never heard the name. He knows you. He know you were here. I heard him tell Fagin. That's why I come here. Well, soon after the robbery at your house, I overheard Fagin and Monks talking. Monks promised Fagin a lot of money if he got Oliver back and if he made a thief of him. Why? I don't know. I cannot understand why. Monk saw my shadow on the wall and I had to go away in a hurry. Well, last night monks come to see Fagin. I listened. I heard monks say I am safe now. Nobody will ever know who the boy is. I have thrown the locket into the river. The old woman who received it from his mother is in her coffin. I don't understand. What can this mean? I don't know, but it's the truth, lady. It's the truth, although it come from my lips. After that, I heard monks say I had killed the boy. If I could do it without any danger to myself, but I will watch him and harm him yet. He will wish that he had never been born. Will my young brother Oliver, his brother. That's what he said, lady. Nancy looked around her in fear. I must be going now. It's late. I must go back. Go back. Oh, don't go back to them. How can you go back? Stay here. I will find a safe place for you. They will never find you, lady. I must go back. They are evil men, but there's one I cannot leave. I cannot ever leave him, lady. Oh, let me save you. Let me save you from that life of misery. It's too late, lady, too late, sobbed Nancy. She felt blindly for the door. Wait, just a moment. Tell me where I can find you. Every Sunday night from 11 o'clock till midnight, you will find me on London Bridge. If I am still alive, how I pity you. How can I help you? Nobody can help me, lady. Only death, sobbed Nancy and got up to life. In the doorway, she turned. Watch over little Oliver want you. She begged and then was gone. Rosemary sank into a chair. She felt faint. After a time, she began to think. She must do something to save Oliver. But what could she do? She thought and thought. All thoughts that night she was thinking. Chapter 19. Mr. Brownlow returns and learns the truth about Oliver. The Maylie had come to London to spend 2 or 3 days there. Rose had to do something quickly, but what? The next morning, after a sleepless night, she still did not know what to do. She did not tell Nancy's story to her aunt. She was afraid it would frighten the old lady. Where could she turn for help? Late in the morning, Oliver, who had been out for a walk with Giles, come home. He was very excited. I have seen Mr. Brownlow, he cried. I saw him get out of his carriage. He did not see me, but I know where he lives. Please, please, will you come with me to speak to him? Mr. Brownlow, he is the man who can advise me. He will know what to do. Thoughts rose at once. She got ready to drive with Oliver to Mr. Brownlow's house. When they reached the house, she left Oliver in the carriage. She gave her card to the servant, asking to see Mr. Brownlow on urgent business. The servant returned and asked her to follow him upstairs. He led her to a room where two gentlemen were sitting. These were Mr. Brownlow and his old friend Mr. Grimwig. Mr. Grimwig rose to leave the room, but Rose stopped him. Please stay, she said. This is a matter that concerns you two. You were both so kind to a young boy, a dear friend to mine, Oliver Twist. Ha! Exclaimed Mr. Grimwig. My dear young lady, if you can tell me anything good about him, I shall be grateful, said Mr. Brownlow. He drew his chair closer to Miss Mary's. He's a bad one, said Mr. Grimwig, a real bad one, or I will eat my hat. Oh no, cried Rose, listen to what I have to say. Then Rose told them what had happened to Oliver from the time when he had left Mr. Brownlow's house. She told them how Oliver had tried to find Mr. Brownlow but had failed. Thank God, that gentleman exclaimed when Rose had finished her story. I cannot tell you how happy you have made me. But you have not said where the boy is now. Has not he come with you? He is waiting outside in the carriage. Mr. Brownlow hurried downstairs. In a few minutes he returned with Oliver. Both of them looked very happy. There's someone else who will be happy to see Oliver, said Mr. Brownlow, who rang the bell, and Mrs. Badwin come into the room. Oliver sprang into her arms. She cried and laughed at the same time and kissed him again and again. I know he had come back, she cried. My innocent boy, my dear, dear Oliver. Mr. Brownlow left Oliver with Mrs. Badwin. He, Mr. Grimwig, and Rose went into another room. There Rose told them the story and Nancy had told the night before. The two gentlemen readily promised to help Rose. They said that they would go to Rose Hotel that evening. In the meantime, Rose was to tell Mrs. Mary and Dr. Losburn. Then that evening they would make a plan. That evening they all meet together. The key to the mystery, Mr. Brownlow said, is that man Monks. We must catch him and make him talk. We must see the girl next Sunday night. She can tell us what Monks look like and where we can find him. Till Sunday we can do nothing, but on Sunday night I will go with Miss Rose to London Bridge. We shall stay in London till Monks is found. Mrs. Maylie said, Who knows what the girl may tell us on Sunday night, said Mr. Brownlow hopefully. Chapter 20. Fagin asked Charlie Bates to follow Nancy wherever she goes. It was Sunday night. The bell of the nearby church was striking the hour. Sykes and Fagin were together in the housebreaker's room. They paused in their talk to listen. 11 o'clock. Nancy put on her hat and was leaving the room. Where do you think you are going? Sykes asked her. Not far. I said. Where? Where do you think you are going? I don't know where. Then I do. Now here, sit down. I don't feel well, the girl said. I need some fresh air. Put your head out of the window then. I want it in the street. Then you won't have it. Sykes went to the door and locked it. He pulled her hat off her head and threw it on the top of the cupboard. Now, stop quietly where you are, will you? The girl looked at him wildly. Let me go. Let me go, Bill. Just for an hour. She began to sob pitifully. Then she threw herself on the floor in front of the door. The girl's gone mad, Sykes said. Get up now, or he raised his fist to strike her. Let me go, screamed Nancy. Sykes seized her arms and dragged her struggling into the next room. He looked at the door. Nancy went on screaming like a mad woman. Sykes went back to Fagin. What a strange girl she is, he said, wiping the sweat from his face. You may well say that, Fagin said very thoughtfully. What did she want to go out for? Sykes asked. I don't know. Fagin told him, still very thoughtful. I have never known her like that before. Soon after this, Fagin went home. He was still very thoughtful. Was Nancy tired of Sykes who treated her so badly? Had she found a new friend? If she has, it may mean danger. Fagin thought, who knows what she may tell him about us? Well, he must find out. That was easy. He would get one of the boys to follow Nancy wherever she went. Yes, that was what he would do. The next morning, he said to Charlie Bates, Charles, my dear, I have a job for you. A job where you will have to be very careful. How much do I get for it? A whole pound, my dear. Charlie's eyes shone. What do I have to do? He asked something easy. Fagin told him, rubbing his hands together, follow Nancy whenever she goes out. Find out who she talked to. If you can listen to what she says. You don't trust her. It's not that, my dear. It's just that she has found some new friends. I must know who they are. All right, I will do it. How several days? Charlie Bates watched Nancy. She seldom went out. When she did, he followed her like a shadow. But Nancy spoke to nobody. When Sunday came, Fagin said to Charlie, Sykes is out on a job tonight. He won't be back before morning. Keep a close eye on Nancy tonight. Chapter 21. Charlie Bates follows Nancy to London Bridge. It was Sunday night. The church clock was striking 11:30 when a carriage stopped near London Bridge. An old gentleman and a young lady got out of the carriage. They began walking over the bridge. A girl came out of the shadows and hurried up to them. Not here, carried the girl. They will see me here. Over there, she said, pointing to the dark steps that led down to the river. The three figures went down the steps. There was a fourth figure behind them, following like a shadow. You were not here last Sunday. Mr. Brownlow said, No, I could not come. They would not let me. Do they suspect you? No. Have I the young lady's promise? as well. Indeed, you have my true and faithful promise, replied Rose. You will never tell monks that I told you anything. Never, said Mr. Brownlow. I will trust you, Nancy said. You will find monks at the three replies in any evening. He is tall and dark. He keeps looking over his shoulder as he walks. You cannot mistake him. Good, said Mr. Brownlow. Now listen. This young lady has told me what you said in the hotel. I want you to help us find these men monks. Monks may tell about Fagin and the others. I promise you faithfully that the others shall go free, said Mr. Brownlow. He's got a red scare on his left cheek. It goes right down to his throat. Mr. Brownlow gave a cry of surprise. You know him, exclaimed Nancy. I think I do. Yes, I think I do well. We shall see. He pushed and then went on. Young lady, you have given us valuable assistance. I would like you reward you for it. Tell me what I can do you to help you. Nothing, said Nancy, weeping. Nothing at all. I am past help. Oh no, said Mr. Brownlow very kindly. We can send you to some safe place out of the country, if you like. There you can begin a new life. Leave your old companion. Come with us. I cannot, sir. I cannot, sobbed Nancy. I hate my way of life, but I cannot leave it. I cannot leave Bill. Please go, sir, now, before anyone sees me here with you. Mr. Brownlow took Rose's arm. Let us go, he said. It's dangerous for her here. She must not be seen with us. Then he said to Nancy, good night. I hope that one day we shall be able to do something for you. Good night, whispered Rose. God bless you, lady. Mr. Brownlow led Rose to the waiting carriage and the two drove away at once. Nancy sat down on the steps by the river. She wept bitter tears. She did not notice the figure of Charlie Bates. He crept up the steps. Then he ran to Fagin's as fast as he could. Chapter 22. Bill Sykes murdered Nancy. Fagin sat in his den, shaking with fear. Charlie Bates had told his story and was now sleeping on a mattress by the fire. From time to time, Fagin looked at him. Fagin's face was deathly pale. His eyes were red with terror. He looked like a ghost. How long would it be before the police caught him? Then he would be hanged. An hour before daybreak, there came a footstep on the stair. Bill Sykes. Bill hurried in with a bundle under his arm. He threw the bundle on the table. There, take that, he said. Fagin did not move. He fixed his eyes on Sykes and said not a word. What are you staring at me like that for? Have you gone mad? No, Fagin answered him, but I have got something to tell you. What? Fagin shook Charlie Bates till he woke up. Tell him, he ordered the boy, pointing to Sykes. Tell him. What? Asked the boy, still half asleep. About Nancy. You followed her, did not you? Yes. To London Bridge? Yes. And she met two people there, did not she? An old gentleman and a girl. That's right. She had met them before, had not she? And she told them about monks and the place where we all meet, did not she? They asked her to go away with them, did not they? Yes. What did she tell them about last Sunday? She said he could not come. Bill stopped her. I will kill her, screamed Sykes, mad with rage. Like a madman, he rushed into the street and hurried to his house. Sykes opened his door, looked it behind him, and pushed the table against it. Nancy was lying on the bed, half dressed. "Oh, it's you, Bill," she mewed, for she was glad that he had returned to her safely. "Yes, it's me. Get up." A candle was burning in the room. Sykes threw it into the fireplace. "It's dark," Bill, Nancy said gently. "It's light enough for what I am going to do." Sykes seized her by the neck. He dragged her into the middle of the room. He placed his hand over her mouth. "Bill, Bill," Nancy gasped, struggling to get free. "I won't scream. Tell me what I have done." "You know, you she-devil." Charlie Bates heard every word. "Oh, don't kill me, Bill. I was true to you. Bill, I have always been true to you." Sykes seized his pistol. With all his strength, he struck her across the face with it. She fell to the floor. He took a heavy stick and struck her mercilessly again and again. She gave a low cry and then lay still, in a pool of blood. Sykes stood over her, breathing hard. He seemed unable to move. Then he began to shake with fear. Her eyes, they were opened and were staring at him all the time. The sun burst through the curtains. Then Sykes moved. He lit a fire and threw the heavy stick on it. He washed himself. He tried to rub the blood stains off his clothes. They would not come out. He cut the stains out and threw the piece on the fire. But there were blood stains all over the room. His dog's feet were red with blood. Sykes cleaned his dog and cried it out of the room. He locked the door and hurried away. He walked without knowing where he was going. His dog followed him. So did something else. Nancy's eyes were also following him. Her eyes were watching him all the time. Her sad last cry was in his ears. Sykes shook with terror, but he went on and on without stopping. Chapter 23. Sykes Run Away. Late that evening, Sykes and his dog entered a village inn. They had been walking all day and both were tired out. The village was sitting round the fire. Sykes did not join them. He and his dog went to sit in a dark corner. He ate and talked without a word to anybody. Although he did not speak, he listened to the conversation. The villagers spoke of the weather and their fields. Nobody mentioned the murder. A peddler came in. He opened his box and showed the things he had to sell. There were combs, brushes, shoelaces, and other things. "And what's that?" asked a farmer, pointing to something in the corner of the peddler's box. "How? That's magic," the peddler told the company. "That will take out any kind of stain: beer stains, wine stains, fruit stains, paint stains, and even blood stains." The peddler seized Sykes' hat, which was laying on the table. "Look here, gentlemen. At this mark, in 3 seconds, I can take it out. Watch me." Sykes jumped up, snatched his hat from the peddler's hand, and rushed out of the inn. He looked back, expecting that he would be followed. No, nobody was following him. He walked on. At the next village, the mail coach from London had just stopped at the post office. The postman was bringing out a sack of mail. "What's the news from London?" he asked the coachman as he handed him the sack. "Have not you heard a dreadful murder? Man or woman?" "A woman. Dreadful, they say, but they know who did it. They are after him." Sykes rushed away into the darkness. They were after him. So was the girl. She was following him. Her eyes shone in the darkness. And that last cry of hers was always in his ears. His strength suddenly left him. Seeing a shade in a field, he went inside to lie down. He shut his eyes, but he could not shut out Nancy's eyes. He jumped up and went to lie down in the open air. Her eyes followed him. She was there also. I will go back to London, Sykes decided. I will hide among the crowds. They won't find me there. She won't find me. Fergus will find a hiding place for me. I will make him give me money and I will go abroad. So thinking, Sykes began walking in the direction of London. Then he remembered his dog. The dog was now a danger to him. People would recognize the dog and know that its master was near. The dog must be killed. Sykes stopped by the sides of a deep pond. He found a heavy stone and tied it in his handkerchief. His plan was to tie the stone round the dog's neck and then drown it. He whistled to his dog. The dog came. It saw the stone, growled, and ran back. Sykes called it again. Again the dog came near and then ran back. It was afraid to its master. Come here, you brute. The dog obeyed, but when Sykes put out his hand to seize it, it ran away. Sykes called and whistled and cursed. In vain, the dog did not come back. Sykes waited for a time. Still, the dog did not appear. Sykes dropped the stone and began walking in the direction of London. Chapter 24. Mr. Brownlow makes monks' coffees his crime. 2 days later, late in the evening, a carriage stopped in front of Mr. Brownlow's house. Mr. Brownlow got out. He was followed by two big, strong men. They pulled a man out of the carriage and hurried him into the house. That man was the mysterious Mr. Monks. What is the meaning of this, sir? Monks asked Mr. Brownlow. Let me go at once. Do you hear? You are free to go, but the moment you do so, I shall ask the police to arrest you. Arrest me? Why? For fraud and robbery. I don't know what you mean, Monks said, looking frightened. You will in a moment, Mr. Brownlow told him. Mr. Brownlow sent the two men outside. Then he said to Monks, sit down. I have a lot to say to you. Edward Leaford. Monks, whose real name was Edward Leaford, obeyed, saying, how can you treat me like this? I thought that you were my father's closest friend. I am. I am, Mr. Brownlow told him. That is why I am treating you so kindly. If I were not your father's friend, I should have handed you over to the police. What do you mean? I have done nothing wrong. I have not you. Well, we shall see. You have a brother, Mr. Brownlow told him suddenly. I should say a half-brother. No, I have not. You know that I have not. I shall tell you what I know. Your father was unhappy in his married life. Very unhappy. He had never wished to marry your mother, but his parents, proud and ambitious people, made him do so. Soon after you were born, your fathers and mothers were separated. Some years later, your father fell in love with the daughter of a naval officer. The girl was named Agnes. He wished to marry her. He promised to marry her, but he was not free to do so. Why are you telling me all this? You will soon see. Well, a rich uncle of your father's died, leaving your father a lot of money. He died in a room, and your father had to go there to settle the matter. Your mother went with him. So did you. Your father died when he was in Rome. He left no will, I think. No will, Monks said quickly. Thus your mother and you inherited all your father's property. Of course, we did. We were the lawful heirs. Before your father went to Rome, Mr. Brownlow went on, he came to see me. Monks turned suddenly very pale. I did not know that, he said. Well, he did, and he told me about Agnes and the child she was expecting. He said that his plan was to go abroad with Agnes. However, he would leave you and your mother £1,000 a year. Mr. Brownlow paused. Monks said nothing. Then Mr. Brownlow continued, I have been making inquiry. I have found out into important things. Agnes died a poor house when her child was born. That child is Oliver Twist, your half brother, and you know it, Edward Leaford. Monks was still silent. I have also learned that your father did make a will. Your mother burned it. You know what was in that will. You and your mother would receive £1,000 yearly. The rest of your father's property would go to Agnes and her child. There was, however, one important condition. You know that as well. Do I asked Monks, but he did not deny it. What was this important condition? Your poor father knew your weakness. He wanted Agnes' son to be different from you. He wanted him to be honest. Therefore, he made his condition. If Oliver became a criminal, he would lose his part of his father's property. For that reason, you, Edward Leaford, asked Fagin to make young Oliver a thief, a criminal. Can you deny it? A fine story, Monk said, trying to laugh. A very fine story indeed, but you have no proof of all this. Show me your proof. The proof is at the bottom of the Thames, Edward Leaford. You throw it there. I know. Mr. Bamble and his wife have told me the whole story. They are the witness of your wicked deed. Monks breathed hard, but said not a word. There was another witness, Mr. Brownlow said sadly. She was that shadow on the wall. She overheard every word of your talk with Fagin. She told me all. She has been murdered for it. Murdered. Edward Leaford. You were the cause of her murder. I was not. I don't know anything about it, cried Monks in great fear. You were the cause of her death, repeated Mr. Brownlow. You and the police shall know of it. I shall tell the police all, unless, asked Monks in a trembling voice, unless you sign this confession that I have already written out for you. And you must promise to give to Oliver Twist his rightful share of his father's property. I will do it. There and then Monks or Edward Leaford signed the confession and the promise to give Oliver his rightful share of his father's property. Chapter 25. Bill Sykes come to a dreadful end. The scene now moves from Mr. Brownlow's house to a ruined warehouse by the River Thames. It was there that Mr. and Mrs. Bamber had met Monks that stormy night. Now today Crackit and other members of Fagin's gang were hiding there. They were sitting in silence when a low knock was heard. Crackit went down to open the door. Charlie Bates came rushing in breathlessly. They have caught Fagin and Dodger, he told them. He stopped and looked terrified, for at the moment Sykes' dog came running in. Bill cannot be far away today, Crackit said in fear. He had hardly finished speaking when somebody knocked. Charlie Bates wanted to see who it was. It's Bill, he told them fearfully. Are you going to let him in? Well, have to, Toby, Crackit said. He went down to open the door. He soon came back with was that Bill Sykes or a ghost. The face was deathly pale. The eye was wild like the eyes of a madman. Was it Sykes or the ghost of Sykes? Fagin's gang looked at the figure in silent horror. What are you staring at me like that for? Came Sykes' voice. Nobody said a word. Say something, cannot you? Nobody said a word. Sykes went up to Charlie's Bates. Charlie, cannot you say anything? Don't come near me, screamed the boy. You murdered. I would never have told about Nancy if I had known that you would kill her. Murdered. Keep away from me. Then at the top of his voice he shouted, "Help, help," murdered. His hair murdered. Charlie Bates threw himself on Sykes. Sykes easily threw him off with his hands at the boy's throat. He was ready to kill him. Crackit and the others pulled him off. "Listen," cried Toby Crackit. From outside there came a roar like that of an angry sea. A crowd was gathering. "He's here," shouted Charlie Bates. Sykes seized the boy and threw him into the next room. He looked at the door, but Charlie went on screaming, "He's here." Murderer, break the door down. The noise outside grew louder. 1,000 angry voices shouted, "He's in there. Shoot him dead. Set fire to the place. Break the door down. Is the front door strong?" Sykes asked Toby Crackit. Crackit nodded. "Are the windows all barred?" Crackit nodded again. "Then they won't get me. I will get away yet. Give me a rope, somebody." They pointed to a pile of rope on the floor. Sykes took a long rope and then climbed up to the roof. There he rolled the crowd below. Sykes looked down on a sea of angry faces. His plan was to climb down the side of the building. Then he would swim away in the river, but the water in the river was too low for that. Sykes looked around him desperately. Crash! The crowd had broken the door down. They were coming up the stairs. Soon they would reach the roof. Sykes tied one end of his rope to a chimney. At the other end he made a noose. With this noose round his waist, he could climb down to the ground and then run away in the darkness. Sykes put the noose over his head. At that moment he saw Nancy's eyes. He gave a wild cry. Her eyes! Her eyes! He stepped backwards. In so doing, he fell off the roof. He fell 35 feet. As he fell, the noose tightened round his neck. He was hanged. His faithful dog had followed Sykes to the roof. When Sykes fell, the dog jumped to reach its master's shoulder. It missed and crushed to the ground. Every bone in its body was broken. Chapter 26. The story comes to a happy end. The story was come to a happy end. Mr. Brownlow adopted Oliver as his son. They went to live in a house that was near the Mellies. Thus, Oliver was very near all his friends. Of course, their faithful housekeepers. Mrs. Bedwin went with them. Gills and Brittles continued to serve the Mellies faithfully. Mr. Grimberg and Dr. Losburn became close friends. They spent many happy hours in Mr. Brownlow's company. Monks or Edward Clifford left England for America. He took a large sum of money with him. However, he soon spent it all. Once more he turned to a life of crime. He was sent to prison and there he died. As a Fagin's gang, Fagin himself was hanged and all the other expected Charlie Bates were sent to prison. Charlie Bates changed his way of life. He became a farmer's boy. For the first time in his life, he was comfortable and carefree.